Welcome back to the news, everyone. Right, this is pretty much the big one in a way. I know there's a lot of crossover, obviously, between our other YouTube channel and this one. So you're probably wondering, what's the deal with World of Warcraft now that the most recent expansion has came out? I know that in a case like this, there are people who, many, I think, have something that they want to hear. Some people want to hear, World of Warcraft is back, it's brilliant. Other people want to hear, it's dead, it's dying, it's doomed. Because, I mean, those opinions are within the direct interest of many people, right? There's a lot of people who would watch our content for what me and Matt legitimately think. There's also a lot of people who would watch it either to have their opinions validated, be that positive or negative. All I can do is share with you the reality of the situation. So, obviously, Shadwlands was a utter catastrophe. I'm never going to not think that Shadowlands was a total disaster for the Warcraft brand. And even though you're going to find out I have a lot of extremely positive things to say, there's some cold hard numbers that really do educate us as to the damage that Shadowlands did to the Warcraft brand. Because had Shadowlands not happened, I think Dragonflight would be unanimously thought of as a absolute humongous victory. But the thing is, it still is carrying with it the weight of Shadowlands. And we do see that in some of the objective numbers. So to talk about the launch, right? Simultaneous global launch, that's all pretty cool. 11 p.m. for us. Lucky for the Australians who get to wake up in the morning and just play their MMO. Of course, the question is, how much could you play that MMO? And we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, this is an expansion that Blizzard have been definitely talking up. They've been saying that it's an expansion that really embodies the big pivot in development style that they had with patch 9.1.5 of Shadowlands. Thus far, yeah, it definitely is that, and more, actually, in a very good way. They're bullish on this World of Warcraft expansion. I think we will have all seen how heavily marketed this one has been. They've definitely put more towards it. I think they know that they are entering what I think is objectively a fantastic expansion. Thus far, they're entering it from a position of weakness. Well-deserved weakness, and I think, at least on the marketing side, they know that. But the company itself does appear to be bullish enough in World of Warcraft. The team, purely by the size of the credits, is 50.6% larger for the ship of Dragonflight than it was for the ship of Shadowlands. So there's a lot more people working in the game, and they're bullish to the point where they just bought an entire other developer called Proletariat. Now that is a noteworthy thing, right? Because they essentially had to go to inorganic means to get staff. Now, I actually know a few people who are in game startups across the industry. And the one thing that I've heard, and this is very different from the indie scale that I'm operating at here with our studio and our game, this is for the people who are, they have the VC money, right? And the one thing that I keep on hearing from these people is that it's really fucking hard to get staff these days, right? Now, I think that's kind of obvious. There's a lot of companies that have got some VC funding. There's also the likes of, say, Blizzard, and I can tell you for a fact they are now significantly more competitive in terms of the offers they're making to staff. Maybe they finally realized that the whole passion thing was a dead end that was eroding the company from the inside. But Blizzard's paying more money. Obviously, you've got Riot, who just have all the money in the universe, basically. So this essentially meant that they had to acquire a company because the normal rate of staff acquisition via open, job calls, that was not growing the team fast enough. Indeed, we've even seen in the past Activision Blizzard talk about just development resources are like the number one limiting factor. Actually, the reason why Bungie went independent, the reason why they were okay with that is because they wanted to free up their support studios to work on other things than Destiny, because industry-wide development staff is like the limiting factor, which is pretty damn crazy. And I think that means, hey, if you want to be a coder who's really good, at game engine stuff, or a technical artist, boy howdy. I mean, technical artists, if you want a job, become a technical artist. Trust me, they're like the unicorns that everyone wants. So, of course, they've been talking about all of this. They even talked about, how they've delayed the activation of some weekly content in the game, such that people wouldn't feel like they had to rush through leveling, saying they want people to level at their own pace. They've been talking kind of like about the thematic plans for this expansion, which is very much anti-Jailer, the much ridiculed, pathetic failure of a end villain that they put into Shadowlands, an end villain that in fact retroactively weakened many other pillars of the lore. Blizzard perhaps not fully even now appreciating how much they damaged players' investment in this secondary world. I think it will be seen to those looking at World of Warcraft from a historical perspective as the single largest narrative mistake that they've ever made, much in the same way that people think about how, say, and okay, maybe it won't quite kill the game like it did for Star Wars Galaxies, but of course we all remember the story where Jedi used to be special, then they were no longer special, and there was the update that basically killed that game. So they've been talking about how they're not rushing to confront a world-ending threat, talking about populating the world with actual life and cultural presences. You'll dragon ride around the Isles, you'll find nooks and crannies with hidden treasures, creature stories, and quests that all contribute to the story of this place. I'll talk about my own opinions later and a little bit of Matt's. What I can tell you, though, is so much more than any World of Warcraft expansion I have played before, do we have a large quantity of side quests that are actually really good. In the same way that people talk about how a lot of the side quests in Final Fantasy XIV, the ones alongside the MSQ, are sometimes really strong. Yeah, we're actually seeing similar things here. It's like the beast has been awoken. Honestly, it does feel like the world has been built by a different team. I have to wonder if Shadowlands was quite a thrust from the top end, and maybe that their staff weren't able to find as much passion in creating the world of the Shadowlands. I think that shows, because what does show in the creation of the Dragon Isles is definitely more passion and more heart than I've seen in the game. It does not feel like the fake plastic place that the Shadowlands was. That's interesting. But now I'm going to bring you with some harsh reality. Something that should be sobering for even the most bullish on World of Warcraft. Let's talk about stream numbers. Of course, in the lieu of proper gameplay statistics from Steam or something like that, we have to go in secondary measures like stream numbers, where we see nearly 800,000 viewers and 11,000 channels for the immediate launch of Dragonflight. Now, Twitch drops. So the Twitch drops were basically, watch for a certain amount of time, and you will get the Feldrake mount. Now, the Feldrake mount would be seen as being pretty desirable. It was a trading card game mount that, even in the months running up to this, was going for about $3,000 on eBay. So, I mean, big rip to the person who bought that, only for the thing to be made free. Now, what do Twitch drops mean? Well, they mean massively concentrated attention in a short period of time, because you're offering people an extrinsic way or an extrinsic motivation to increasing the popularity of that Twitch category. And then Blizzard also had a thing where you could get this little pet if you donated 2 gifted subs to a streamer. Now, with all of this, you may think, boy howdy, this must be it. This is going to be the biggest ever. Nah. So, Shadowlands launch, its peak viewers were actually 150,000 higher, and the peak number of channels streaming was double. Yeah, so Dragonflight had a 15% decrease in viewers and less than half the channels that were there 2 years ago. And I think the thing that really makes it poignant just how much Shadowlands fucked the IP, there was no Twitch drops for the Shadowlands launch. So Dragonflight has not produced the numbers of Shadowlands on Twitch, even though Twitch drops were enabled for Dragonflight. Now, if this was to be combined with people saying the initial experience was a 6 out of 10, then we'd be having a discussion, I think, honestly, of the death of Warcraft. Yeah, I do think that. I always thought, look, if Dragonflight's a dud, we're fucked. We're out of here, boys. That's what I thought. You're going to find out it's actually significantly better news than that. And that is the funny thing. This is why you don't do a Shadowlands, because you put a game out that has at least the initially very strong gameplay experience of Dragonflight, and because you did Shadowlands, its Twitch numbers are not performing as well, which is pretty crazy. Now, as for the launch itself, look, it was not perfect. I was lucky, but not everybody was. So, right, what happened? Well, the boats weren't coming. Yeah, that's the way that it was. Boats would arrive into Stormwind, and an airship from Orgrimmar that would take you to the new expansion's zone. And they were busted, which is quite interesting. They literally didn't arrive, and it was broken. Now, on my server, after the world server went down a few times, the developers spawned a portal where you could just click in the portal and it would take you to the Dragon Isles, thus, circumventing the whole boat problem. Now, for me, that was fine. I was in about 60 minutes. And what's quite funny is I had a perfect experience with zero lag until about 5 in the morning. Yeah, I only noticed lag at 5 in the morning, which says to me that it's probably not a quantity of player issue. Maybe it is some sort of problem, some bug or something that cropped up as time went on, because, the peak loads obviously would not have been there at 5 a.m. So they had that. They had problems. I do believe in the United States there were larger issues. I had people on my Twitter telling me, like, look, they've only got to the end of the first zone because they lost about 8 hours to problems. Now, that sucks. Shadowlands actually had a flawless launch in comparison. I don't really remember any major issues with Shadowlands. I mean, I think I remember some server queues, but stuff that's like the game's being busted? Nah, I wasn't there. There were bugs and shit, obviously, but not to the scale of this time, which is unfortunate. I'm aware that I had a more positive experience than most. I only lost about an hour, 15 minutes tops, 2 issues. So that's how it worked out for me. Now, there are bugs. Someone just found their UI reset. Matt actually has found that his key bindings get reset, which is extremely annoying. Blizzard, of course, are working on hotfixes. There are some funny things. Liquid Max, the streamer, had some funny bugs with the dragon riding. I've seen people have weird things with druids and their flight form. So, it is kind of silly stuff. What things are transient, what are not. These problems will be fixed up in a few days, right? And then that leaves us with what's actually there, the game that is actually there. Okay, so the thing you probably want to know is WoW fucked? And, well, I would first say, think about why you are looking at my face right now. Which I know, we're getting a bit weird and meta. But think about why you're looking at my face. And look, I do this sort of thing too. We all will perhaps buy a product and then maybe we think we want to learn more about the product, but we end up Googling some reviews after we have it. And this is actually a massive trend. And it's because people want validation, right? You don't want to be the fool. You don't want to be the patsy or whatever, right? So I think in this sort of situation, there's a lot of people who maybe will have found our channel as me and Matt were cataloging the absolute degradation in our own mental states as we came to terms with just how bad Shadowlands was. I'm of the view that Shadowlands was quite bad in a gameplay perspective. I think it was quite bad in a world-building perspective. I think it was bad in a writing perspective. I think it was bad in a dialogue perspective. I think it was bad in its reverence to the broader lore and the world that had been built over 2 decades. I think that the stuff with the jailer, put it this way, if, let's just say, if I was a Christian, and, that was like... Basically, here's the point I'm trying to make. The jailer was fucking blasphemy, is basically how it felt to me, right? It's like, imagine if somebody got the rights to write a sequel to Lord of the Rings and, like, they just inserted a character that, like, anyone who really likes Tolkien would look at and be like, this is blasphemy, in the same way that, I'd say, mostly after episode 3 of Rings of Power, I went from, potential, this could be quite good, and I guess it kind of makes sense for Galadriel to be a bit, but she is, like, at this stage, thousands of years old. And also, what happened to her husband? I wonder how they'll answer this. I went from that, like, being cautious and there being, some hope that things could be good, to by the end thinking, this is blasphemy. How? What? That is what the jailer was to me, right? Like, for the Trekkies who have seen, and I love Star Trek as well, and, you see some of the modern Star Treks, like Picard especially, like, just take a big shit on the things that you've liked, right? Like, this has happened to so many of us in so many IPs, for a lot of the people who really like Star Wars, and then they have, the J.J. Abrams rehash movie, the Rian Johnson, suddenly I'm going in a different direction to what was set up movie, and then the J.J. Abrams, I'm going to create one of the worst movies ever made that's paced like a TikTok movie. Like, yeah, if you're a fan of Star Wars, man, you guys got messed around. That's what it was like to us in World of Warcraft. You know, it was like, wow, what have you done? There's a certain South Park episode involving George Lucas doing things to IPs. I'm sure you remember the South Park episode. That is what Shadowlands was to me. That is what Shadowlands was to Matt. It is what it was to many, many hundreds of thousands of people. And I know it sounds very bizarre to say that, but it is true. The hundreds of thousands of people who watched our videos. Now, for us, this was always rooted in a place of, look, we love what this game was, and we're so fucking disappointed at where things are now. We're going to talk about it because we care about it. And I know that if I was kind of watching this from a consumer's perspective, and certainly when I would watch Preach's content, whenever, you know, the times when Mike was just losing his marbles at how messed up shit in the game was, like, to me, that was cathartic and enjoyable. It was like a kind of a way of a form of hate watching, because it was validating shit. It was like, yeah, these things that I'm feeling, here's this mythic raider who comes to the game with a different perspective, and he's feeling it as well. Oh, wow, we're all in the same revolution. And that's why when I talk about Dragonflight, I have to tell you the place that it comes from. Me talking about Dragonflight with any degree of passion comes from the exact same place that I talked about Shadowlands with any degree of passion. Because I cared about Shadowlands, because it made, I mean, take the people who watch, The Last Jedi retrospectives that keep on being made, or Star Trek Picard retrospective videos. You might hate it, but you undoubtedly do care about it, because that's why you watch that shit. You're interested. You know, you want to see, oh, how did Chris Chibnall come in and mess up Doctor Who? It's like, you still care about Doctor Who if you watch or make that content. That's why you're there. So it's like that for me. The difference is, the Dragonflight's actually really fucking good, guys. That's basically the situation. Now, I do have a few issues. I think some of the voice acting, it's 120% where it should be toned down a bit. It's just too much. And, you know, there are some aspects of the world that just feel like a little bit softer and stuff that kind of feels weird. But then, you know, you do things like the quest with the dragon whose visage form is like a dwarf. This dragon's like, you know, over 10,000 years old. And it's just a quest of you sitting there, listening to this guy talk. And then you, like, retrieve a little time capsule for him. The writing is fucking brilliant. It's a really good quest. It's just well written. And yeah, in the same way that FF14 might have a bit where it's like, yeah, right now we're just going to be a visual novel for a second, but this writing is good. That's what that quest was. The dragon riding. Blizzard have not been fun police about the dragon riding. Dragon riding is so goddamn fast. Like, there's times it's almost Twitch reflexes. It's so fun. The dragon riding came out fantastically. The quantity of content in the world is also insane. There are so many side quests, it's utterly bonkers. But with the way that they've managed how the new reputations work, which is, I think, some of the best overall design that they've done. Perfect. The way that from the get-go there are alt catch-ups for these reputations is also brilliant. You have them tackling a more simple story, where, you know, the main story is simple enough. We basically have the primalists. They're just the elemental Ra. You know what I mean if you're from NI. Right? It's just, there you go. These are the elemental terrorists, and there's the big dragon they're following. Yeah, there's a bunch of complicated lore reasons for why all these people are here, but they work well enough for a basic villain. Stuff's rooted in a bunch of characters we've known for quite a while, which has worked, right? Like, you know, your Alex Strazas and stuff, and like Alex Straza works really well. Rathian actually works really well too. The whole Rathian Sibelian thing, I think that story is actually being set up to be really good. So you have a campaign that really works, and then you hit endgame, you're like, holy fuck, there's so much that I can do. Because all those side quests, they're not pointless, useless things. They will contribute to the reputations. And, you know, as you go up the reputations, you'll unlock more story content in those reputations, and then, the narrative content of the endgame, where there's like 9 full chapters of endgame that were encrypted in beta that we basically know nothing about. You combine that with the team being significantly larger, with them saying they want to be delivering more patches. Obviously, you know, don't buy the game based on that promise. You can only buy the game based on what is there now, because they need to earn our trust back, and that's bloody key. But I guess what I'll overall say is, like, the attention to detail, the minutiae of things. Even Matt was talking about how they were structuring dungeon quest loot and the actual dungeons themselves, and just like a few smart little things they did, where it's like, fuck, this is way better. Professions. Right? Like, I was leveling a priest with skinning, which made no sense, but I just wanted to click in things and I killed them, and tailoring, so I could get a, taste of making my own gear with the new profession system. New profession system is brilliant. This is fucking brilliant. This is really good. It's really good. And I guess that's the thing. This, I mean, and you got to remember too, like the people that I hang out with. Doomers. Doomers, you know? Doomers who will be posting funny shit they found on V, right? On, you know, the VG, the general thread for Warcraft over on 4chan. Like, that's the people that I hang out with on the internet. Yeah, I hang out with fun degenerates. It's fucking great. But for the longest time, we were clowning in the game. I remember massively enjoying patch 8.3's launch day because some bits were so bad that basically me and the boys were in utter hysterics. Utter hysterics laughing at stuff. Right? During Shadowlands, like, we all quit multiple times. And, you know, basically, if you were to find a guild that was still, like, in and around World of Warcraft, but was, like, maybe even more negative than us, like, you'd be hard-pressed. You would be hard-pressed. You've seen the stuff that I've said. You've seen the stuff that Matt said. And then I go to what people in my guild have been saying about their experience. Some people saying this is the most they've enjoyed, like, the leveling up process since Classic, which is like, oh, wow, that's quite a statement. But yeah, look, stuff is significantly better this time around. That essentially is the point. The game's not fucking you. You know, you're not being fucked over with some borrowed power system. You know, the shitty situation with the legion or the legendaries in Shadowlands, the way the covenants were bullshit in Shadowlands, right? Like, these are not problems. The only hoop that I have to jump through is get gear in my MMO, where the gearing system's actually, this time around, it's really well designed. Like, were you in World of Warcraft calling for deterministic gearing? It's there in the professions, right? Like, the resources you get as you do dungeons and raids can make, like, some of the best gear in the game, and the way that it's soulbound and the whole work order system with crafting basically means the game has got Valor points now. It's got Valor points, like, that's back, you know? So, essentially, here's my initial final, not final word, but, like, this is my impression, right? They have opened themselves a window of opportunity. Look at this graph. You can see, like, Dragonflight is, I mean, maybe if I was to say right now, its launch experience is an 8.5 out of 10, while Shadowlands would have been a 6.5 out of 10. Shadowlands did have a honeymoon period. Dragonflight undoubtedly will have a honeymoon period too. I will say that the initial response to this expansion from the actual players that I've seen talking about it is way better. Actually, let me just get my phone up here. I know this is a bit unprofessional, but I ran a poll on my Twitter. Now, you know, it's fair to say that my Twitter is going to have a selection bias to people who are pretty salty about World of Warcraft, because I've been pretty salty about World of Warcraft. So, or just so you can see it, but I'll bring up the tweet. So, I just asked people, and this is not a perfect poll, but I said, your time thus far, has it exceeded expectations? Has it met your expectations, as in good? Has it met your expectations, as in bad? Or has it fallen short? And 37% say that it exceeded expectations. 46% said it meets expectations in a good way. Between meet expectations bad and fall short is a total of 17%. And this is a poll taken by 11,000 people, which is a bit weird. Now, you've got to remember with the bad expectations and the falling short, a lot of people who responded to that, or at least per my audience, would have been from the US. And I do believe that they had worse expansion launch issues than us did. I had people tweeting me that, you know, multiple hours of problems. So that would probably skew it a bit more negative, and it being, honestly, our audience probably also skews it a bit negative. Yet you see there a clear supermajority of positivity, right? I mean, it's 83% are positive. 83%. I mean, here we are where, you know, we're always joking about how the good old-fashioned 48-52 referendum is hilarious and always crops up. But here we have like 82%. Now, If, say, Taliesin and Avatal's audience was to take that same poll, I think it would be a bit more positive. Maybe if some of Asmongold's audience took that poll, it would be a little bit more, like, negative or something. But you even look at Asmongold's, like, pre-expansion tweet, where he's talking about being genuinely excited for the game again. Yet, these numbers are lower, right? These numbers here are lower when you look at this graph. That just tells us, you know, you got to bounce back. You don't just go from here to here, right? Do you remember Warlords of Draenor, right? It was like, bam! 11 million, 10 million people are back. Then they all are fucking gone within a few months, right? Or, you know, Cataclysm, bit of a dot expansion. You see the numbers go, you know, boom, and then boom. I think, honestly, maybe somewhat gone are the days where World of Warcraft goes, bam, we're all back, and now we'll retain people. Nope, it's a slow climb. It's a slow climb. That is the price of Shadowlands. But the basic ingredients, the essentials, are there. If the design philosophies that have made this expansion be this expansion are continued into the future, I think it is more likely than not that World of Warcraft Modern will grow. And I think grow in a lasting fashion. This is a game that is radically more fun to someone who is not just doing Mythic Plus and Raids. Now, they do need to do more in terms of world content going forward. But that essentially is the point. This has been I think a weaker launch in terms of numbers than Shadowlands. Remember they said Shadowlands was the fastest selling through game? PC game of all time, which was then hilarious because Cyberpunk, you know, took that immediately after. Of course, none of that's about day one sales. It's basically about pre-orders before launch. So I don't think you're going to see the same press release for Dragonflight, even though it's been so heavily marketed. I mean, fucking hell, my partner, she can't escape Dragonflight. It follows her everywhere with adverts. Like, they're pumping this hard. I don't think it's going to sell through at the same rate that Shadowlands did by launch, because Shadowlands burnt people so goddamn hard. And Blizzard need to prove over time that they can get things like the lore to be in a good state again. But this is where the angle of the curve changes into an angle that's more positive for World of Warcraft. And that really is what I think about this one. So there you go, everybody. That is just, you know, my opinions on the launch. I'll not put words into Matt's mouth. I can tell you that there are so many times it's like, if I was in the Blizzard marketing department, I would be screenshotting things that he was saying in our guild chat and just posting them. You know, it's like, here you go. The fucking saltiest man on the planet is saying good things. So there you go, everybody. That's the situation. Blizzard has potentially got a humongous win in their hands. They need to be careful moving forward. I think with a diligent workmanlike ethic, they will be able to claw World of Warcraft back. They need to, with their lore, be reasonable. They cannot be too fast. They need to realize the things that have made people enjoy the game as it is thus far. They need to learn how they can push those things forward, borrowing lessons from other MMORPGs. I mean, they're doing a really good job with the world. Could they put a little bit more of that Guild Wars 2 juice in when the next expansion comes around? Like, if Dragon Riding goes out of the game, they're fucked. That'd be a terrible move. Dragon Riding's gone down unanimously well from what I can tell. I mean, some people are salty about it, but basically it's went down very well from what I can tell. And people will become accustomed to flying at absolutely fucking cracked speeds throughout the world. So in the next expansion, if I was Blizzard, I'm going to think, okay, well, you know the way Guild Wars 2 has raptors that move like this and has, you know, this type of mount that moves like that? All right, Blizz, you've got to work out, you know, what do horses do in World of Warcraft? What does this do? What does that do? What does a mechanical mount do? They need to make like 8, maybe, whatever, categorize. Either they need to make categorizations of mounts and then actually inject gameplay into them the same way they've done with Dragon Riding, or they just need to maybe take the Final Fantasy XIV approach and just hand wave. Just be like, whatever, a fucking cloud spawns underneath your horse's hooves and now it can fly. I mean, that would be a bit daft, but they need the Dragon Riding stuff to continue long into the future. But I'll tell you, if they do what they say they're going to do, in terms of having a more robust patch cadence for this expansion, and if it builds upon what is here, if we get that archaeology revamp that they've basically said is coming, and it's good, if we get the new version of the Mage Tower, I guess, and the Mage Tower back, and the Brawlers Guild back, but that'll be really good. If they can build on what they've made here in a smart way, then I'd almost say that in principle that's everything they need to get this game back to where it was. And certainly knowing that the team is literally 50% larger than it was 2 years ago, well, certainly helps too. That's it for this video. Let me know what your experiences have been, and I'll see you next time.